So if you're seeing this, I don't know how you got on, but anyway, you probably you're watching the replay, okay? And I got to make sure about this. I got to get the chat up, got to get the Q&A up, all that stuff. It is 8 o'clock out here in beautiful Federal Way, Washington. And let's see, people are coming in. We got a lot of people coming in right now. This is great. Great to see you all. I'm Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's dad and marketing gunslinger. And if it seems like we're a little bit off right now, it's because this is not Spark. Okay, this is not Spark. And this is the first of the monthly webinars that are restarting again, covering all kinds of different topics. But in the very first one, I decided, okay, I need to go out and find a superstar. All right, I need to go out and find somebody who is absolutely going to kill it and is going to make it really hard for every other guest that we have from now on. We're here to talk about marketing, maybe a little branding, who knows what we're going to talk about, but we're going to talk about stuff that is supposed to help make you more money. I've got here, my guest this time is my newest best friend, Joe Sullivan, who is co-founder of Gorilla 76. I know it sounds like a gas station, but it's not. Gorilla 76, which is a B2B, I should say manufacturing specialty marketing agency, headquartered it's headquartered in St. Louis, right?
You got it. Yep.
Okay. And let me introduce Joe to you, and we're going to get going on here because he's really got this thing dialed into what how he wants to approach business, his philosophy, all that good stuff regarding helping companies and clients grow their business. So let me pull up his bio here. He's an industrial marketing consultant of 10 plus years. He's 38 years old. I don't even remember 38. So, and co-founder of the St. Louis-based industrial marketing agency, Gorilla 76, as I just said. Gorilla helps mid-sized B2B manufacturers create modern marketing programs that deliver meaningful business outcomes. He heads up sales and marketing for the agency. And I noticed that in there, Joe, it says that when somebody starts to work with you guys, that they got your name in there. They say, you're going to work with Joe. So you go right to the top, right at the beginning. And, he heads up sales and marketing and consults with Gorilla's clients in both sales and marketing. He also hosts a really good podcast called The Manufacturing Executive, which is for manufacturing leaders. Outside of work, and this is obviously disappointing, he likes to cook, which is cool, but he likes the Green Bay Packers. And he has two crazy kids, Grace, who is 6, and Jack, who is 4, and his wife of 10 years, but he doesn't put her age in there, Julie. He is a Milwaukee native and a graduate of Washington University in St. Louis. And so he's transplanted from Milwaukee. And so, Joe, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Thank you for being here. Very excited that you're here. And let's start out with a little bit of your background by just asking. Oh, wait, what am I doing? I'm forgetting to let you guys know this is being recorded, so this will be archived. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A because I will be monitoring. If you see me looking over here, I'll be monitoring the Q&A, and then we'll pass those questions on to Joe for you. If you want to come into the chat and just say hello, feel free to do that. Tell us where you're from, whether you like the Green Bay Pack, what you think of the Green Bay Packers. Feel free to say whatever you want to say. We don't care. Yeah, let's beat those guys up. All right. So let's go back into your background a little bit. All right. You started you started Gorilla 76 in 2006. Is that what did I remember?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So what'd you do before that got you to where you decided to go this direction?
I went to college. No, I basically,
Wait, you
you
went
know,
to college in 2006.
yeah, I graduated in '05. I took my first job in a marketing agency in St. Louis. It was a company called Shoop Company. They were about a 30-person firm at that time. And I worked on Miller Beer mostly and a pharmacy brand simultaneously. It was more, B2C focused, but I kind of, sharpened my skills there for a couple of years, but it was really, it was while working there that my business partner, John, and I kind of founded Gorilla as it was a freelance, like nights and weekends thing for about 2 years. And we kind of landed a little bit of a client base of our own. It was a lot of, it was like, local, the hair salon down the street and the dentist, a mile away, and a few restaurants and things like that. Kind of anybody who'd write us a check really was our client base early on. But we,
get it. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we, so you take what you could get, and we were kind of writing a business plan simultaneously. We really wanted to own a small firm. And we landed a job with a construction company that was, it gave us enough income for the two of us where we could live on it for like 3 or 4 months. And we're like, okay, now's the time. This is about 2 years into my career. And so we just said, we were stupid 24 or 25-year-olds, whatever we were at the time. And, thought we could survive and start a company. And we were also living on, had no responsibilities in life. So we quit our jobs, we started the firm, and really that construction job was big because it just like, we realized very quickly, we loved working with companies that made stuff with their hands. And so early on, we would have told you our client base was like blue collar brands or people who made stuff. And it took a few years before we had a few small manufacturing clients, and then we realized, okay, that's where we want to be. So neither of us were engineers. There are marketing firms out there that the founders were engineers, and then they got into marketing. We were marketing guys who kind of by chance found our way into manufacturing. And then when we realized, pretty quickly, we really loved it. We loved working with the manufacturing sector. We just decided to own it. We positioned ourselves that way, and everything kind of snowballed. And we've been able to build our expertise in that sector for, probably over 10 years at this point.
Okay. And you guys have a distinct philosophy that you very clearly talk about your philosophy in multiple places on your website. And can you kind of just share a little bit about what Gorilla's philosophy is because I want to preface this by saying that, in my experience, of which is really long, and just to make sure everybody understands, I had my COVID shots a long time ago. And, I've been connected with not only just agencies, but also a lot of marketers, obviously, and companies. But agencies, one of my biggest complaints about agencies, marketing agencies, who used to be called advertising agencies. Then they started to call themselves marketing agencies. Then they started calling themselves digital marketing agencies and all this sort of stuff. But it was still basically the same approach. Was they did not connect their effort with results. Okay, and that was one of the things that really grabbed me about what I learned about you guys. So can you talk about that a little bit, about how, because getting results is a big part of your philosophy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really it stems from the sort of what marketing has meant to manufacturers traditionally. Like, what would I have learned from, we've consulted probably over 100, mid-sized manufacturing organizations at this point over the years. And one thing that rings true, and thankfully it's starting to change a bit, but manufacturers, B2B manufacturers, tend to be very sales-driven organizations, and their perspective of what marketing really is marketing is, the guys or gals who make our trade show stuff, and they make our website look nice, and they make print brochures, and we run some print ads in the trade journals or whatever. But And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't matter. It all has a place for sure. But the perspective is marketing is a group that executes these tasks within some budget. And meanwhile, sales is out there to drive revenue. And our perspective on it is that that's completely backwards. Marketing's job is to source pipeline. Like that, marketing's got two jobs, I think, if you had to boil it down. It's to build the brand over the long term and to be able to source pipeline for your organization. And so, when the way we've positioned ourselves, I don't know if anybody listening is running EOS, based on traction in their organization. We're big fans of that and run that at Gorilla. But like, there's the three uniques that you're supposed to kind of have for your business. Where it's like, if you combine these things, nobody else can really say this. And so as a marketing agency, industrials our niche. We've talked about that. The second one is depth is our specialty. We develop marketing programs that are informed by intensive investigation of our customers, their markets, subject matter, to position clients as thought leaders. That's the second one. Then the third one is what we're talking about here. Marketing source pipeline is our metric. And leading metrics like rankings in the search engines and traffic and leads, these do not mean anything if they are not producing actual business outcomes like pipeline and revenue. And so that's kind of what drives the things we believe in.
Yeah, I have the philosophy that if you cannot, and I use the term straight, a solid line versus a dotted line, that if the tool that you're using doesn't have a hard solid line attached to a sale at some point, then it's actually not marketing. Because in my opinion, marketing drives results. To me, it's advertising. And in a lot of those cases, and I equate advertising, I use that as a generic term. I equate advertising with awareness. That the sole objective, and I've heard this a lot, not just from marketers, but from ad people in general, in multiple industries, all industries, where they'll say, oh, well, we're going to help you build brand awareness. And my response to them is, I have never cashed a check on awareness. Not once have I ever cashed a check on awareness. Now, I've cashed checks on, great marketing. And brand awareness is, to me, something that is a result of great marketing. To where, but I'm much more interested in brand persuasion than I am in brand awareness. And so, like I say, it struck me that you were, that throughout your website, you guys are talking about this connection with results, which, I just love to see that. And you also have kind of you have a system in place, like a 3-part system, right? Of how you approach this stuff. Now, when you are working with somebody, when you first start working with somebody, how do you have, what kind of a conversation are you having with them that says, here's how we're going to get to getting you money, right? Can you kind of take me through those steps?
Yeah, I would love to. And I want to, if it's okay, Steve, I want to make one more comment on where we just were that I think is important. Because I think that, your comment about brand awareness, I think it's one thing to be noted about marketing and results is not every single thing you are going to do is going to immediately connect to revenue. There are the daily things you are going to do that are part of the bigger picture. Right. That brand awareness is the goal, and over the course of time, it's going to lead to revenue. But I think one mistake, like we've almost gone too far as marketers in some cases to say, well, this thing I'm doing, I can't see $1 attached to it, because some things are going to take time to play out. It's repetition, consistency, and I'm talking about publishing of content. You're not going to publish a blog post and see revenue from it next week or next month or maybe even 6 months from now. When you're consistently doing it week after week after week, and the leading metrics the things that I talked about, like traffic and rankings, if those things are pointing up, well, it's eventually going to point there. But one of the mistakes I see is companies pulling the plug on these things that are meant to work over the long term. So I just wanted to kind of clarify.
Yeah, and I, and also I want to make sure everybody understands, right? Okay, I do not believe in that there is one way to do something. Okay, all right. I believe there are many roads to the top of the mountain, and and I have a philosophy, and Joe has a philosophy, and there might be some slight differences in our philosophies, and that's okay. But what I do, but to kind of tag along with what you're saying, and I don't say that I see the sale from this marketing strategy or tactic, whatever we're doing. What I practice what I call next step marketing. And what I mean is I'm very big on direct response, that I like to have call to action, in everything. I like to ask for some type of engagement by the people that if whether we're offering them something, a lead magnet or something like that. But something beyond just, call for more information. And so it's sort of like even at a trade show, for example, and I've used this example many times before, where I say to people, what is your objective at a trade show? Well, what is your first objective at a trade show? Well, besides identifying who your target market is, because if we think in terms of IMTS, for example, and obviously keeping our fingers crossed that we're going to see it next year in 2022, that there will be, I don't know, 100,000 plus people coming through the doors of McCormick Place. But an exhibitor doesn't have 100,000, prospects. All right. First of all, there's a percentage of them that are coming through. So what is the next step in the relationship building process? Well, the next step is that the people who they want to see have to stop in their booth, and the people they don't want to see keep walking. All right. So, and then once they stop, now what's the next step? The next step is to engage them. Okay. And then what's the next step? Is to set up a post-show thing. So there might be multiple steps before we get to that sale. But as long as I can see a next step that is on the way, then that I'm all for that. Okay. So go ahead and keep talking about how you guys, engage with people, because to me it's your steps are very, very I think are really smart, quite frankly. So
thank you. Yeah, so basically, I wrote an article. It was looking at it here. It was December, just kind of looking ahead to the new year here, and everything holds true here still, but it kind of broke down a very simple framework for how we believe, again, our audience is mid-sized B2B manufacturers, how to do marketing in a way that is going to generate impact. And there are a lot of ways to work within this framework, but if you had to boil it down to three things, it's basically this. It's 1, focus; 2, create; 3, distribute. And I'll tell you very quickly what each of those means, and then Steve, we can unpack them if you want to. But
let's do it.
But so number 1, focus. So simply stated, what we're talking about here is choosing an audience segment. Every single client we've ever talked to says, well, it's really hard for us to, choose somebody to focus on with marketing because we serve, 10 different industry verticals, and we've got big products and small products. And for some people we do service and maintenance, and other people they're bigger engagements, and that's fine. That's everybody. I mean, at least most companies. And, the thing we emphasize is that if you try to channel your marketing energy in 8 or 10 different directions, you're going to accomplish nothing unless you've just got some insanely large budget and resources to deploy all that. And almost nobody does. So what we emphasize up front is we got to pick an audience segment, or if it's not, it may not even be an industry vertical. In some cases, it's more of a, persona focused segment. We're going to focus on, some sort of senior engineer at companies that resemble this or this or this, or have these characteristics. But we got to create some focus around who we're trying to reach, and then what types of companies, and then what people inside of those organizations that are going to be most influential in the buying process. So for a lot of my clients, it's, we're choosing maybe an industry vertical or two, and then we're saying, all right, we are going to, the most influential person in this is this type of engineer or plant managers or, whatever. And then there's, CFOs and the C-suite's playing a role in this. Procurement's always playing a role in it. But typically, what I'm hearing is we got to get in with the engineers early, because those are the ones who are experiencing a problem or trying to write a spec or, whatever it is. And the earlier we can, sort of get discovered by them and have that conversation, the better chance we're going to have of ultimately winning the business. And so, as a result of a conversation like that, it's okay, we need to focus on engineers with these job titles at these types of organizations. There's our marketing focus. Doesn't have to be forever. It doesn't mean you don't work with other companies or other verticals. It just means we're going to intentionally channel some of our energy in that direction. So that's focus. Number two, create. And so we are huge advocates at Gorilla of sort of harnessing the expertise and experience of your subject matter experts, and being able to pull the insights out of their brains to address the things that those people care about, the people that we just decided to focus on. What are the triggers that lead those people into the buying process? Whether those are internal company triggers, like, equipment reaching end of life, or a plant expansion, or new senior leadership, or whatever it is, a new product line that's hitting the market next week. There are triggers that are going to lead these individuals into the buying process. We need to understand what those things are. And again, if you're focused on 10 different types of customers, there's never going to be, how can you ever focus on triggers of a specific type of person? It's too many, it's too broad. And as a result, your marketing strategy that needs to be tied to that stuff is not going to resonate. So what are those triggers that lead them to the buying process? What are the biggest challenges that these people are facing? What are the questions they're most commonly trying to get answered during sales calls? We're huge advocates of customer interviews. What are you hearing from the mouths of these people if you're conducting customer interviews or voice of customer work with them to understand what they care about? So understand those things, and then create content that addresses these things. And so this is where, like I said, it's about pulling the knowledge and experience and expertise out of the brains of your people, the people who understand those things that the customers care about the most. And then let's produce content. Content can come in so many forms. It can be a webinar like this. I mean, imagine doing this exact thing, but targeting those specific types of engineers at those specific types of companies about put together a webinar where you've combined 3 or 5 of the most common questions that you get from them during the buying process. Let's do a webinar around that. You can write blog content by interviewing those individuals, or if you run a webinar, transcribe the webinar and throw that to a copywriter and have them turn that into written content. There's a podcast. Like, not a lot of manufacturers are doing podcasts yet, but manufacturers are listening to podcasts, and so like there's a lot of room for growth there. Video content, hire a professional videographer, or just do stuff like this. Could you put 2 of your subject matter experts, around a table talking to each other or on a Zoom meeting, and moderate a conversation with them to produce some video content? That's low production value stuff, but if the content's good and you get it in front of the right people, they're going to consume it, and it's going to create thought leadership for you. So it's making content. Create is number 2, and then number 3 is distribute. And so if you asked me 7 or 8 years ago, like, how are you going to get in front of the right people from the right companies? I would have been probably talking your ear off about inbound and SEO, or search engine optimization, which I'm still a big believer in all that, but it can't be the only way. Unless you are a large company with a lot of authority in the real world that translates to a lot of online authority with the search engines, it can be a challenging game, and it's a long-term game that requires a lot of work and consistency, and everybody should be doing it. But you can't rely, especially if you're, if you're kind of relaunching marketing or being serious about marketing for the first time, it's going to be an uphill battle, or at least a long-term play. And so you need to be proactively figuring out, how do we get these amazing insights that we've addressed through content in front of the people that we have decided we are focused on. And there's a lot of ways to do that, from email to using the paid social channels like LinkedIn, or believe it or not, Facebook works really well in the industrial sector. But you have to go where your customers are, and then you have to figure out how to target them so that we can get these assets in front of as much of your total addressable market as possible, and with consistency. Again, it's a consistency game. It's not a one and done game. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the focus, create, distribute.
Okay. Well, I guess we're done. No. Well, and again, like I say, part of why I wanted to talk with Joe is because this tracks really nicely with my own philosophy, because those of you that have read my book or heard me long enough, you know that I talk about that the first step is hunting moose. We use our own words, and we call it hunting moose. So again, like using the IMTS as an example, let's say 100,000 people coming in, and not all of, and those are all the animals in the forest. This is just a big giant forest, and all these animals are coming in to the forest, but we are only hunting moose. All right, we're not hunting deer and beaver and rabbits and birds and fish or anything like that. We are just hunting moose. So we have to know the moose really, really, really well, and that is step one. Step one is knowing who your moose are and knowing them better than anybody else does. And so let me throw this back to you, Joe, because I think it's funny that often I think this sounds very sales or marketing 101-ish when I talk in terms like this with some companies. And yet it is probably and yet after all these years of teaching this now, our clients almost universally point back to that, as that was the first question that really made the difference for them, was really, really focusing on it. And you said, you mentioned that you'll talk to somebody and they'll say, well, we have 7 or 8 different targets or markets, but you laser beam on one. And I often say, well, let's look at it this way. Let's play the 80-20 rule.
Mm-hmm. All
right, 20% of your customers are giving you 80% of your money. Mm-hmm. And what we often find is that while they're saying, look, we're actually going out for 7 or 8 different types of targets, okay, we often find that really 1 or 2 of them represent the 80% of the money. And that's often where I start with them and say, okay, that's the moose. So that's how we have to know them, and we need to know them better than anybody else, because then, as you say, create. But no, I'll tell you. Let me back up. Throw it back to you again. What has been your experience with companies about this idea of focus? Do you find the same experience that I've had, that it's really interesting how many really kind of they kind of spread out, and they do more shotgun than they do rifle shot?
Yep. Very consistently in the early consultations that I have with a new client or prospect, we look at, where's your business coming from? Who are, what are the different markets you're serving, or types of customers? And it's, 90% of the time it's kind of all over the place. And again, I'm not criticizing anybody for that. Like, that often just happens naturally over time. My, where I have some beef with it is when we say, well, they're all equally important and we need to focus on all of them with our marketing. And there's 2 ways. If you're going to focus on all of them with your marketing, it's going to mean that you are going to make your message so generic that it's going to resonate with nobody. Like, that's one way to do it. Or you're going to focus on everybody and you're going to spend probably 10 times what you should on marketing, because in order to do anything meaningful, you're going to have to invest such a significant amount of resources into doing them all equally. And frankly, you're not going to be able to manage it. So do you want to do something impactful with 1 or 2 or maybe max 3 types of customers at a time? Or do you want to throw the same amount of money and to chop it up in 10 ways and probably get nowhere? I mean, it's a hard, a lot of my clients struggle with that early on because there's internal politics and different people have different priorities for what type of customer they want to reach. Different sales, professionals have different types of customers they're focused on. And so again, the way I like to describe it is you need to focus in some way for some period of time. It might be for the next 6 months, we are going to focus very heavily here and here. And then we're going to be successful there, and then we're going to learn what's working, what's not. And now we're going to roll it out to other customer types, right? But yeah, I like your analogy of hunting moose, and maybe it's not hunting moose, maybe it's hunting pheasants or sticking frogs or whatever. Like whatever
whatever terminology they want to use,
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be.
But of course they're going to use mine. But
yeah.
I mean, I taught them that, and yeah, you see. When a client gets that down, because because the next step is, we'll get into the next step once you've identified the moose. But once you've done this process that we're talking about right now, and it and once it starts working, well, then you can say, and I have one client who says they now talk about 2 other target markets that they want to go after. But they refer to them as one they refer to as the rabbit, and one they refer to as the donkey. I don't know why they call them the donkeys, but because I wouldn't want to be one of their customers called a donkey. But that's what. But now but they're saying, okay, so we have this program aimed at our moose. Now we're going to go create a program aimed at the rabbits, right? Or like you say, the pheasant maybe, or something like that. Because when we get to the second part where you're talking about create, this is where I talk about message. And we both know what we're looking for is message to market match, right? Is that it can't be a generic message. It has to be a message that your moose, when they hear this message, when they see this message, when they read this message, they all of a sudden stand straight up and they say, they're talking to me, right? That's what we want them to do. They are talking to me, and they pay attention, right? And they ultimately raise their hand and say, yeah, I want to talk to you.
Yep.
Okay. That's why when I say moose, and it was Robert Collier who, an old advertising marketing guy. He was more of a marketing guy, but back in the days, and I think he wrote his book. It's the Robert Collier Sales Letter book, I think is what it's called. And he made one of the smartest statements in marketing history when he said the objective of a marketer is to join the conversation that is already going on in the customer's mind. And I use the analogy, or I use the example of when I first moved to Seattle, and I had a BMW because I lived in Southern California, and I was, Southern California idiot. And I came up here, and most of my adult life, I wanted a 4-wheel drive. I really could, a Jeep. That's what I wanted. I wanted a Jeep. So I got up here and I thought, okay, now I can get a Jeep. And I did some research, came up with this. I want to get a forest green Jeep Grand Cherokee. That's what I want to get. Okay. And so I made it my decision that, within a couple of weeks, I was going to get that Jeep. Right. So that's the conversation going in my mind. Well, up until that point, or I should say at that point, when I made that decision, this is what I want. I couldn't believe how many forest green Jeep Grand Cherokees were on the road that I never saw before. I didn't know there were that many on the road. But you see, this was now the conversation going on in my mind. And so now my mind is looking for that, right? And it's just like with your customers or your prospects, that they have something going on in their mind. And if you say something, show them something, whatever, that joins that conversation, they pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
They pay attention. So, and that's that message to market match. And the more, and moose have something in their minds, rabbits have something in their minds, donkeys have something in their minds, pheasants have something on their minds. Every one of them, you have to have a message to market match to get them to want to raise their hand. All right. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to look at it, Steve. I think your Jeep example is fantastic, and I was kind of laughing inside as you were saying that, because that's me right now with a Ford Explorer. I've had my car for longer than I want to admit, my Camry that I'm driving, and I've got 2 little kids, and we got one more on the way this August, and like the sedan's not going to work anymore, and so it's the exact same thing though. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot more Ford Explorers out there than I realized. And yeah, it's on my mind right now. So now, like, you translate that into your setting. Well, we come back to focus, right? If your audience is these 5 different types of customers or these 8 different verticals, like, how can you ever understand or be able to deliver a message that is going to resonate with any one of those? Because everything's going to be way too generic.
Mm-hmm.
When you focus on a specific type of customer, and then you go inside that company, like I said earlier, you say, all right, these types of engineers and plant managers are the 2 most influential personas within those organizations. Now it's like, okay, what do those people talk about? What are the problems that, these, advanced manufacturing engineers are experiencing on a regular basis? And, if you've got 5 great customers that resemble the types you're trying to replicate, that is a perfect opportunity to do a customer interview with that exact, AME inside that organization that you need to be able to replicate with new prospects, and be able to understand, like, what's their job like? What do they do during the day? What are the problems they run into when they're in the market for buying the thing you sell? Like, what are the things they're trying to investigate to help them through that buying process? And pull all these insights directly from their brains. Because I think a lot of companies make way too many assumptions, frankly, about what their customers value, what they care about, what problems they're experiencing. They think they know them, and they do in a lot of ways, but there's nothing like hearing that directly from them. The second best thing is to hear it from the people on your team, account managers, salespeople, the people who interface with those people. That's still secondhand though. So I love going directly to the source, but again, you got to focus on the things that matter to those people.
And to follow up on that, I would say that the number one thing I want to look for is dissatisfaction. It's like I say, I moved up here, I had my Beamer, perfectly good car. It was a great car. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it was a great car, but I was dissatisfied. And the moment somebody is dissatisfied, they want to make a change. And this is, and so I often say that, there's a phrase out there, and if Peter Eelman sees this, he's going to know exactly what I'm going to get ready to say. And that is that the phrase "find a need and fill it" is 100% bogus. We think everybody needs us. We think, I think everybody needs me to come in and help them. You think everybody in manufacturing needs you to come in and help them. We think everybody needs our rotary transfer machines. I mean, that's just what we think. Okay. But not everybody agrees with us because they're not dissatisfied. They're perfectly happy with what they've got right now. And as long as they're perfectly happy, they are not interested. They do not feel they have a need. They have to have an acknowledged need. Okay, they have to agree that they have a need, because if they don't agree that they have a need, we're just, spitting in the wind. And so one of 2 things needs to happen. Is number one is we look for those people who already have that dissatisfaction. All right, and we try to join that. I was dissatisfied. I was looking for something to replace my BMW. I knew exactly what I was dissatisfied. But then there are also those, but then there are, like I say, there are a lot of people who don't agree that they have a need. And so then our objective is to make them dissatisfied. Is to show them, that, what you got going. If this is how you're doing this right now, you may not know this. Or what if this happens, or if you want to sell your company or something like that, what kind of assets do you have, or that type of thing, and so to me, those are kind of the two types of messaging that I want to be going out with. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And I think there's a lot of like a real buzzy word right now, as Steve, the last few years in the marketing world is demand generation, and people are using it interchangeably with lead generation, and it's not the same thing. But I think, what I'm hearing from you is like there is demand out there that already has to be filled, and then there's also demand to be created. And one example of that, so our podcast, The Manufacturing Executive, this episode just went live last week, but I interviewed Kevin Roach, who is the president of Harpak Alma, which is a client of ours. They are a manufacturer of packaging machinery, like huge packaging machinery, out in the Boston area. In fact, I know they are regular attendees of IMTS, and a large percentage of their marketing budget typically goes there. But anyway, Kevin, the interview with Kevin was just fantastic. I think it might have been my best episode to date. He's just a brilliant leader. But anyway, he talked about two concepts in particular that they use inside their sales process with their customers. One was TCO, or total cost of ownership. Another one is OEE, or overall equipment effectiveness. And because what they sell, like many of our clients, is it's CapEx equipment. We're talking about $1 million pieces of machinery with long sales cycles, committees of buyers, very consultative, sales process. And so, something they bring that into the discussion in one of the examples that Kevin used as an analogy, he kept bringing it back to like our personal lives. He said, if you're buying a car and one car is priced at $20,000 and the other one's priced at 30, which is the better car to buy? And well, the answer is like, well, I don't know what I need to understand all the details about one car versus the other. And he said, well, all of a sudden you start looking at the details and it's like, okay, this car, the oil has to be changed every 30 minutes. And this car, the oil has to be changed every 3 months, right? Obviously sure. Extreme example, but now you're getting into, painting a picture for somebody that they may not really understand, like to an unsophisticated buyer or somebody who doesn't, who just doesn't understand all the details. Now you're painting a picture for them of, in this case, total cost of ownership, and you're helping them understand, okay, I don't necessarily have this issue with my machine right now, but I didn't know I had an issue. And as I'm looking down the road, as this machine reaches end of life, now I know what things I need to be sort of comparing. So, it's kind of an extreme example, but I think that's an example of creating demand and helping people understand the problem that they might not know they already had.
That's exactly right. It's creating a question in their mind that is a real question. And I want to make sure I stress that. Okay. I'm not trying to manipulate somebody. I'm not trying to just sell them something. I'm trying to bring very real life types of questions that people don't often think about.
Yep.
They don't often think about this stuff. And we just go, look, here is why we have this machine.
Yep.
Okay. Here's why we manufacture this machine, because we saw in the marketplace a gap. We saw something that was happening that was actually costing people more money than they should have been spending. And so we came up with this solution for that, because all we do is solve problems.
Yep.
That's what we do. That's all we do is solve problems. We don't sell stuff, we solve problems. And if you can't tell them about a problem that you're going to help them with, then you've got a problem, quite frankly. And I would say that, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say this comes right back to, with the step two, this idea of create content that matters to these people. Like what you're talking about right now is, Steve's a perfect example of like, this you're an expert. Like everybody here is, you or the people at your organization are experts in the thing that you create, the thing you sell. And as opposed to sitting there and talking about how great, your product is and how amazing your customer service is, which it very well may be, but everybody else is saying the same dang thing. Use the expertise of the people on your team to help address those problems, to help create that demand, and do so in an objective way. Lay out the facts. Not everybody's a buyer, right? And not everybody is going to be a buyer. Not everybody is going to be in the buying process right now, but the people who are ideal customers, this again, why focus is so important. If you can focus on the things that are going to matter to them, because it's going to help them do their job better, it's going to help them address the issues that they're experiencing or the problems they don't even know they have, but are going to matter to them. Focus on making content around those things, and now all of a sudden, the ears are going to open, as opposed to you kind of blasting a megaphone at them, talking about how amazing you are.
Yeah, I equate most advertising, and in my mind, I delineate advertising and marketing differently, like I described earlier, that advertising to me is playground shouting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're just trying to be the loudest person on the playground.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want, I don't want to be the loudest person on the playground. I just want to be sharing stuff that people want to hear.
Yep.
And I think content marketing, has, and it's funny because like the difference between you and me is, like I said, I don't remember being, what are you 30? Anyway, I don't remember being that old. But in the years that I've been around, I have watched the pendulum go like this in so many industries, and terminology, that is being used today. So like for content marketing, okay, content marketing has been around for 100 years. Okay, it just wasn't called content marketing. It was called my dad tearing articles out of magazines because he said, you know what, I think this customer of ours might be interested in this. Yeah. And putting it in an envelope and mailing it to them and saying, I saw this and thought you might be interested in that. It's content marketing, right? Or ABM, all right? When I was selling into the toy industry, well, hello, everybody was selling to Kmart, Toys R Us, Walmart, okay? And we had to focus on them specifically, all right? Now it's called ABM, all right? So, a lot of things that and like content marketing to me and ABM were always great marketing tools. They were always great marketing tools, and they are still great marketing tools, despite the fact that the medium is different. The media that we use is different, and which gets to the idea of the distribute part, right? Is this to me is, and I just call it media, but distribute is exactly the same thing, by saying, how do we get this information to them? How do we communicate? Where do we communicate with them? Are they, you made the comment about Facebook, for example, that intuitively, I think most of us that are B2B, and maybe those of us that are manufacturing, B2B, we would say, you know what, LinkedIn is the place to be, right? Nobody would think, or I shouldn't say nobody, but most people would not think that Facebook would be the place to be, when in fact, that's, what, the moose are hanging out, right? And if there's a way for you to attract their attention while they're hanging out, because maybe during the week, and feel free to chime in anytime here, that like maybe during the week they're looking at LinkedIn. At the office they're looking at LinkedIn, okay, but on weekends they're on Facebook. Okay, well, I'm going to where the moose are.
Yep.
That's why and that's part of that conversation you and I have not had yet, about that guy on LinkedIn who said, give me your $2 million that you would spend at a trade show, and I'll go spend it elsewhere over here. That's not a new idea. But at the same time, if my moose are at that trade show, I will be there.
Yep.
I will be where my market is.
Yep.
And that's, and so when you talk about distribute, give me a little more detail in how you determine, where you distribute.
Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, so we've talked about focus, right? We've talked about picking an audience, and we've talked about learning what, making sure we understand what the buying process influencers in those companies, the most important buying process influencers, care about. We've talked about making content that addresses the things that matter to that person. Now, the thing we need to do is we need to get that content in front of people, because if you publish it on your website, you're going to sit there and it's the equivalent of just sort of sitting around hoping the phones start ringing, right? Like, people aren't just going to show up just because you publish it. And so the search engines will play a role if you're doing it well and you're doing it consistently. There's a lot of factors that go into that I'm not going to get into, but what I'm talking about here with content distribution is, let's start with some low-hanging fruit, which I'll talk about in a second, and then let's look at where your audience is, as Steve was just saying, and let's figure out how to, in a very smart way, get in front of those people consistently. So, a few things here. The low-hanging fruit is email. Email still works. I don't care what marketer, the marketers who like to declare things, this is dead and that's dead. I don't care what they say. Email works, and it works in the manufacturing sector. We see it work with our clients. But you got to treat email.
And to back that up, if somebody says to you email is dead, turn and run away from them as fast as you can.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. 95% of manufacturing organizations are using email the wrong way. They're not using it as a distribution vehicle for content that matters to their audience. They're writing about, the new customers that they won and who won the company, dodgeball tournament, and pictures of the dog that whatever the secretary brought to the office. Like, nobody cares. And so the way to use email is a distribution vehicle for all these amazing insights that you're creating for very specific people around things they care about. It is writing a 3-paragraph excerpt to a 500-word blog post you wrote. It's putting a screenshot of a video of me and Steve next to each other, which I will probably do to promote the recording of this episode.
Sure. Yeah, we both will.
Yeah, and because this is value, right? We're creating value. Everybody who's still hanging around here, either you walked away for lunch and left your thing on, or you're actually getting value, and hopefully that's why you're still here. But you will then use email to distribute this stuff, and the more targeted you can be, the better. You can send this content to this part of your audience because it's most relevant to them. That's great. The more customized that can be, the better. But email is low-hanging fruit. Everybody's got, I usually, when I audit a company up front, one of the questions we always ask is, how big is your email database? How well segmented is it and organized is it? And usually the things I hear are, well, I don't know, we got maybe a couple thousand people in there. And I say, well, how about inside of your sales team's Outlook? And they're like, there's probably thousands and thousands. Okay, well, let's get organized, and let's find people who are existing and past customers and prospects that are still relevant. Let's cleanse those email addresses. Let's get them updated and segmented. And now let's use that as one of your distribution vehicles for content. So email's one thing, low-hanging fruit. Every 2 to 4 weeks, you should be sending an email to your audience that is distributing valuable content with no ask in return. Or if your ask could be a very small, at the bottom, like if you're interested in having a conversation about, fill in the blank, let's chat for 30 minutes, or however you'd position that consultation, that would be, a starting place for you, but it should be focused on value. Okay, now let's talk for a second here about social media in particular, because here's where this is such a missed opportunity for so many companies. And I am not talking about using your company page to post a link to a blog post you just wrote. That'll get about 5 views, or maybe 50 views and 5 thumbs up, and it's probably going to be from your cousin and your mom or something, right? It's like on LinkedIn and Facebook. What I'm talking about is putting some media dollars behind the channels where you identify your audience is there. Like, again, let's talk about Facebook. Like, people think to themselves, well, this is B2B manufacturing. Like, we're not going to market on Facebook. Facebook's for B2C, or well, a third of the world is on Facebook, and you don't go to Facebook to look for, information about, CNC machines or whatever. You go to Facebook because because you want to see what your friends are posting, and you want to look at pictures of your niece and nephew or whatever, but you're a human being. And while you're sitting on the couch at 10 o'clock at night watching Sports Center, a lot of you probably are flipping through your phone, and this is an opportunity to target very specific people with specific job titles from specific companies and specific geographic regions with specific interests, and eliminate everybody else. That, like, you can target the exact type of person you want because of who they are on Facebook. And again, the objective here, in the same thing applies to LinkedIn. It's just Facebook. You're going to find more of your audience there, most likely, and it's going to cost you about 20% of what LinkedIn's going to cost you to do. So I like to at least start there and look at what's possible on that platform. But you should be looking at both of them. But I guess the point is, people go to Google when there is some intent. You go to Google when you are looking for something specific, a specific type of machine or a specific type of service or company. There's usually intent behind a Google search. So you need to be present there, right? But and you need to target your audience there, ideally organically. You probably supplement it with some pay-per-click. But when you're on Facebook and LinkedIn, the objective there is, because again, people don't go to Facebook or LinkedIn to look for a product they want to buy. They go there for other reasons. You want to be able to drip content in front of them. Like, we could take the 5 best 2-minute clips from this webinar right now, and we could say, let's target CEOs and directors of marketing or CMOs at mid-sized manufacturers in the US who are of this size. And let's put a headline on the video, and let's put this out there in front of just people who fit that description. And then, right. And these algorithms of these platforms are so smart that somebody who consumes 2 full videos like that over the course of a week, now we can say, okay, well, Facebook, anybody who consumes 2 full videos, 90 seconds worth of those videos, now let's show them a case study video. And I could do that. And now you're playing to the buyer's journey. It's like, okay, now they're showing maybe some consideration or some buying intent. What's the next thing that should get shown to them? Or maybe I should show them an article that compares, that's 10 questions you should ask a marketing agency or whatever, right? So I know you like that one, Steve. But anyway, like,
yeah, you got to use that. You've changed change your FAQs to that.
Yeah, exactly. You've talked about this example, or like I wrote an article years back, like why we don't answer website design RFQs. That would be a great one to drip in front of somebody who's consuming content about rebuilding their website, right? So anyway, I guess the point here is content distribution. Look for the email is low hanging fruit. Use it to get out in front of the people who already know and like and trust you and are in your database. Use tools like LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube is another one, where you can target very specific people, not people who necessarily have intent, but when they all of a sudden enter the point of their buyer's journey where they do have intent, you are the one who has been consistently delivering value to them, and you're going to be top of mind for them. So that's the one where Steve, I commented earlier on, like, not everything you do is going to produce short-term revenue, but when you run these campaigns for 5 months, I can almost guarantee you, if you are executing this well, a lot of it comes down to sound execution and content that is truly amazing for that buyer. You are going to see your RFQs go up. You're going to start conversations with the right people.
The way that I would plus that from my perspective is that in each and every one of those, I would still have a lead magnet. Mm-hmm. Where I would say at the end, hey, if you like this conversation, if you'd like to get a transcript, or you'd like to see show notes, or would you like to see, or we have another article that tracks right along with this. If you'd like to have that, click here, right? So and that's how I would be tracking that stuff and helping them to go to that next step. But you're exactly right. And speaking of lead magnets. Speaking of lead magnets, where was it? We're going to send people to gorilla76.com/
I think we said subscribe. Gorilla76.com.
subscribe. There we go.
Subscribe is our newsletter. Yeah.
Because you got an excellent newsletter. I really, I've been getting it, and I think it's really a terrific newsletter. So where can I put that? Well, all right, gorilla76.com/subscribe. And then you'll be able to put in your email address and get that. We are right at closing time, but I want to say that if you do have a question, fire it up there real quick. And if you do, we'll stick around for a couple minutes to answer that. And if not, then of course we will be moving along. So I'm going to help you wrap this up by saying that on your website, which of course I was looking at, and got to the Gorilla Manifesto, which I love, and you quoted a professor at the University of Missouri School of Journalism, Steve Kopcha. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, this is my business partner, John. He's a Mizzou alum, and Steve Kopcha was his advertising professor somewhere along the way.
And what did he say?
He said, great ads or good ads sell stuff. And that's actually in big words in one of the rooms, in our copywriter's room here at our office. And that, I think it's pretty straightforward, but it's brings back that theme, right? Like you need to, the work you're doing on the marketing front needs to produce real business outcomes, not just leading metrics, right?
Yep. Absolutely. So, since we don't have any questions on here, and it's 9:01 out here in beautiful Federal Way, Washington, I'm going to cut this off. Although there's more we could be talking about, because like you just said, copywriting, and copywriting. That's the superpower. Here
you go. Here's a free ad for Steve.
There you go.
Here on my desk.
Marketing. Get that book, doggone it. If you haven't read that book, go get it. Okay. Papa's got to pay for COVID shots or something like that. Anyway, thank you very much, Joe Sullivan, co-founder of Gorilla 76. Remember, you can go to gorilla76.com/subscribe to get their newsletter, which is excellent. I highly recommend it. And I know you and I will be talking more. Who knows where, but whether it's on Clubhouse or somewhere else, we'll be talking some more, because I really enjoyed this conversation. Do you have anything that you want to just leave them with real quick, and then we'll get out of here?
No, I appreciate you having me, Steve. And, I think I kind of laid out the framework, and I just recommend you follow it. Give some thought to, create and focus and build your marketing program around that.
Right. So, okay. Thank you, Joe, very much. And for the first post-Spark webinar, I think we did a great job. So this is Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's dad and marketing gunslinger, and you know that I will be back on the monthly programs, and go check out Joe by getting their newsletter. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.